If you spent any real time working with these large language models, you know that feeling, that specific frustration. You feed it this huge document, maybe, I don't know, 500 pages of text specs, and you ask this complex question about one detail buried way deep inside.
And the model just comes back with, sorry, I don't recall that. It's that classic context problem, isn't it? The AI just gets overloaded and its accuracy kind of drifts off.
Exactly, just loses the plot. But what if the AI wasn't just passively reading all those tokens? What if it could, actively debug the document?
Right, yeah.
Imagine a system that sort of peeks at different parts, asks itself questions, follow-ups, and jumps through the data like a really thoughtful engineer would.
That is exactly the kind of shift we're seeing in these sources we looked at. We're really diving into a new generation of AI intelligence here. It's moving beyond just predicting the next word. It's getting into genuine strategic reasoning.
Welcome to the deep dive. Yeah, we've got a really fascinating stack of research, some current events here too. Our mission today, it's pretty straightforward. We're going to explore how AI is getting better at thinking strategically, both internally within these massive data sets and externally when it's navigating the whole web.
Yeah, and we've got a pretty clear roadmap laid out. First up, we're going to unpack these things called Recursive Language Models, RLMs. MIT's using them to basically solve that long context blindness. Pretty cool stuff.
Right. Then we'll hit the current landscape. Quick updates. Anthropic's got some new skills. There's this surprising flop of an AI pet.
Oh, yeah, the Gen Z pet, right?
Yeah, that one. And also how these conflicts with governments are starting to shape the market.
And finally, we're going to dig into Apple's new search model, DeepMM Search R1. This thing is, well, it's basically a self-correcting system that learns to research almost like a human debugger. So let's jump into the science first.
Let's do it. So first segment, MIT's breakthrough with recursive language models, RLMs. These seem, well, pretty explicitly designed to kill that long context problem we mentioned.
They absolutely are. And what's really fascinating is how they do it. So an RLM, think of it like a system where the AI takes a giant task, breaks it down into smaller, more manageable pieces, and then it queries itself to find the answers to those smaller pieces. It's basically a model that asks itself questions.
Okay, that immediately sounds way more strategic than just, forcing it to read everything in one go. But let me push back just a little bit. Is this just a fancy new label for a really good agent system?
That's a fair question. But the distinction, I think, is pretty crucial. Instead of trying to cram hundreds of thousands of tokens into a single prompt, which, as we said, leads to context rot, the RLM kind of adopts a developer's mindset.
Okay, tell me more about that analogy, a developer's mindset.
Yeah, imagine watching a programmer debugging a huge pile of code or data. They don't read every single line, right? They jump around. So the mechanism is kind of elegant. The RLM peeks at chunks of the context. Then it does this sort of internal grep, searching for specific patterns or keywords, maybe like a user ID, user 67144 or something. It splits the data based on what it finds, and then it recursively calls these subqueries to focus only on the little segment that's relevant for a final answer.
Okay. So it's dynamically building this chain of thought that's optimized for the data structure itself, not just following some pre-big instruction list.
Precisely. And that's why the performance gains are just wow. The sources pointed out that an RLM built on, get this, GPT-5 Mini actually beat the standard full-size GPT-5, beat it by 114% in accuracy on complex tasks. That's a huge lift, especially for a smaller model.
114%. That's a staggering number. And importantly, the sources also note it kept that accuracy even when the context ballooned to 1,000 documents. That's real-world robustness.
Exactly. That robustness is what matters if this stuff is actually going to get used widely. And going back to your question about agents, RLMs decide how to think. They figure out the strategy internally. Traditional agents, they just follow the fixed rules you give them up front. This is different.
Okay, so that difference, the internal strategic decision-making, that feels like it fundamentally changes the potential for long-form reasoning.
It absolutely does. It lets the AI strategically manage all that information, basically avoiding getting overwhelmed. All right, so moving from those lab breakthroughs to what's happening out in the market right now, we've got some interesting quick hits on the tools people are actually using day to day.
Yeah, it's fascinating how quickly these base models are adding specialized skills that, actually save us real time.
Definitely. Take Google NotebookLM. It can now handle arXiv papers. So it's kind of like having your own personal research professor for academic stuff. And Anthropic's back in the mix, letting users give Claude specific automation skills. That really boosts its usefulness for businesses, right?
And there was a small tool update, but honestly, one I really needed. ChatGPT can now automatically manage your saved memories. I still wrestle with prompt drift myself sometimes. So auto memory management sounds, frankly, pretty crucial.
Yeah, you can go into settings now and prioritize which memories are more important. That's a big usability win for sure. But shifting gears a bit, let's talk about that Gen Z AI pet that just kind of flopped.
Oh, right, the stress relief companion. I remember the launch hype. It was all about being this non-judgmental friend.
Total flop. And the source material mentioned that psychologists basically called it. They predicted users would just find the interaction awkward, not genuinely soothing or comforting, trying to engineer an emotional connection with an algorithm. It just felt hollow to people.
It seems like what we're really looking for from AI is genuine utility. And maybe if product tries to lean too hard into that emotional side, people just sense the artifice really quickly. Interesting cultural read.
It really is.
Yeah.
But the mood shifts quick back to geopolitics. It's not just AI competing with AI anymore in terms of capability. The sources are really highlighting this AI versus governments dynamic now.
Yeah, that conflict seems to be heating up fast. You had the White House clashing directly with Anthropic over AI regulation proposals, and some folks in D.C. apparently labeled the company's concerns as just fear-mongering.
Right, and this ties straight into the business angle, too. Because of these kinds of conflicts and the whole push for regulation, AI startups are really doubling down on controlling data quality. They're starting to see high-quality vetted data as, like, the new AI goldmine. It's all about the data now. So why do you think this conflict between AI companies and government regulation is really intensifying right now?
Well, the sheer power of this new AI to influence society, it just demands immediate and really careful governmental oversight. It's becoming unavoidable. Mid-roll sponsor read placeholder. Okay, let's pivot to some practical, actionable strategies we pulled from the sources. We often get caught up talking about the huge compute needed for these giant models.
Yeah.
But sometimes just a really smart prompt can be the secret weapon.
Oh, that's a massive understatement based on this data we saw. There was one novel prompting strategy that gave an LLM a crazy 200% performance lift, 200%. Just in contextual faithfulness, how well it stuck to the facts, all from structuring the question better.
200% is just incredible, especially because, as the source noted, it actually beat out complex methods like supervised fine-tuning, SFT, and direct preference optimization, DPO. Those usually take a ton of resources and complex model tuning.
Yeah, it really reinforces that idea that how you use the tool matters just as much, maybe more sometimes, than the raw power of the underlying model. But strategy isn't only about prompts, right? This brings us to what one source called the silent killer of AI projects.
The silent killer being
Misusing these incredibly powerful AI tools to just accelerate a bad idea. You might have the best AI, but if you haven't correctly defined the actual business problem you're trying to solve first, you're essentially just failing faster, maybe more expensively. Design thinking, that's presented as the real edge here. Define the problem right.
Right. And the sources really emphasize that most AI initiatives don't collapse because the tech fails. It's usually human factors, organizational friction. There was mention of needing a framework to handle those, quote, 7 workplace personalities during an AI shift. The skeptics, the overenthusiasts, the teams working in silos.
Exactly. It's the human resistance, the poor process definition that actually stops the tech from delivering value. We're hitting people problems, not really coding problems anymore.
We also saw a quick list of some new tools that kind of fit this practical problem-solving theme. Things like AlphaSiv converts research papers into conversations.
Yeah, and Reducto takes documents and spits out clean, structured data. Emergent, which turns text descriptions into actual working apps. And Supercut for auto-editing long videos into short clips. The focus is clearly on productivity gains, making things easier.
So, okay, beyond that huge prompts lift number, what's the core lesson here about using AI effectively?
It's got to be. Define the right business problem first, always, before you throw these powerful AI tools at it. Okay, our final big discovery takes us back to strategic AI, but this time focused on how AI interacts with the outside world. Apple's deep search R1. And this is definitely not just another simple retrieval model.
Right, this sounds like a genuinely multimodal LLM. It doesn't just search the web, it actually self-corrects its own approach in real time if the first results aren't good enough.
That's exactly it. And its abilities are just fascinating because they show the kind of strategic thinking we usually associate with like highly skilled human researchers. It decides when it needs to search and, crucially, what it should search for. It issues actual strategic queries to the web.
And it handles images smartly too, right?
Yeah.
If you give it a picture, it apparently automatically crops it to zoom in on the important part before it searches. So it's prioritizing the visual context, not just throwing raw pixels at the problem.
Yeah, but the self-correction loop, that's the real kicker here. It actually reflects on the answers it generates. If the first batch of web results look kind of weak or contradictory,
Yeah.
it automatically rewrites its own query and searches again. It keeps iterating until it finds reliable sources.
Wow. That level of strategic reflection and iteration, it seems incredibly powerful. So how did it actually perform compared to the methods we use now, like RAG?
Well, it's significantly outperformed all the open source search baselines they tested against. Scored something like 21 points higher than common RAG workflows.
Okay, let's pause on RAG for just a second. For anyone listening, RAG is Retrieval Augmented Generation. Basically, the AI fetches external documents to add to its knowledge before answering. But you're saying RAG workflows often add noise.
They often do, yeah. Array can sometimes pull in documents that aren't truly relevant, maybe just because they share some keywords. Deep MM Search R1 seems to avoid that by being much more targeted and strategic in its search.
And the sources also noted it nearly matched the performance of GPT-03, despite running on a much smaller backbone model, Qwen 2.5 VL7B. That points to some serious efficiency gains.
Whoa. Yeah, just imagine scaling a self-correcting system like that up to, say, 1 billion queries a day. The efficiency and accuracy improvements for any major search platform would be just massive.
And here's the really crucial bit, the part that feels like a paradigm shift. Unlike those big retrieval models that need these enormous, constantly updated indexes, the system apparently doesn't need a huge internal data library. It just learns how to use the public web intelligently, like a really focused researcher who knows how to find things.
So if this kind of model doesn't need that massive index, how does that change the future of AI search, do you think?
Well, it seems like it shifts the whole focus away from just indexing ever more data towards teaching the AI how to navigate the web efficiently and strategically. It's about skill, not just storage. Hashtag, tag, outro. So we started this deep dive talking about AI's context blindness, that frustration of it forgetting things and long documents. And I think our sources today have really shown pretty decisively that AI is rapidly becoming much more strategically smart. It's not just about getting bigger anymore.
Absolutely. We saw kind of two parallel trends tackling that original friction point. First, you've got better internal reasoning. That's the RLMs handling massive context by basically debugging themselves.
Right. And second, better external interaction. That's the deep MM search model, navigating the whole web like a strategic debugger, correcting its own mistakes as it goes.
Yeah, so our combined takeaway here feels like the main challenges, the friction points, they're actually shifting. They seem to be moving away from purely technical limits like context window size or model parameter count and moving more towards human limits, things like poor problem definition or just organizational resistance to change.
So, okay, here's maybe a final provocative thought for you, the listener, to consider. The clear emerging trend is AI that reasons more programmatically, more strategically.
So if these LLMs can start self-correcting their own web queries, if they can debug their own context understanding, does that mean the next generation of large models might be entirely self-auditing? Makes you wonder, how quickly human oversight might shift completely towards just high-level strategy and problem definition, rather than getting bogged down in the execution details.
Something to think about. Thank you for sharing your sources with us for this deep dive. We definitely encourage you to check out the links provided, especially on design thinking and navigating that human friction in AI adoption. It seems increasingly important. OutTO music.